Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm KandyCorpse, you can call me Kay, and today is going to be another video of true scary stories that people have posted on Reddit. These first two I have actually heard before. If you hear scratching, don't worry, it's not anything crazy, it's not anything paranormal. I know we talk about that on this channel sometimes. It's my cats. They are not allowed in this room. It's like an office slash walk-in closet. Like my closet's right there that has most of my clothes in it, and then my hamper, I just haven't put away my clean clothes yet, to be honest. But the cats aren't allowed in here because a lot of this stuff is stuff for my shop, for my business. For those of you who don't know, I do have a small business, which is mostly just a hobby right now, and I just sell some of the things that I make, called Winter Witches Crystals. So that's linked if you guys want to check it out. My pages and my site is linked, but stuff from my shop is in here, and they break things, they play with things, they steal and hide some of my things from my shop. Which is really frustrating, especially if it's like a custom order. I cannot have that happening, as I'm sure that is pretty obvious that is not something that I can have happening. So they're not allowed in here. And most, if not at this point, all of my shop stuff is in here. I kind of organized in my last vlog, not the one that's going to be uploaded with this, but like the last one before that. Anyway, you guys know what I mean. So yeah, it's going to be true scary stories. These first two I have actually heard before. These are pretty old. I've had these pulled up for a while, but I've heard these because they're older a while ago. I don't know if everybody has heard these, but I do know they're interesting stories. They're very popular stories, and one of them does have a happy ending. So I still wanted to read them for you guys anyway. And then the third one, the very last one, I actually have never heard before on any other apps. I haven't read it before. So the last one is going to be new to me. I think it's still older, but these first two I have actually heard before. Usually I don't like to read ones that I've heard before, but I don't know. I kind of like these. I've heard these before. Honestly, the second one I might have actually read on my channel. I don't know, but the second one's short. So anyway, all that put aside, I'm just going to get right into it. I know this is what you guys are here for, so no more updates. You can catch that type of shit in my vlogs. So this first one is titled The Man on My Patio. Warning, long post, but I recommend you read it all. Okay, so this happened when I was around 9 years old, 25 now. This was 5 years ago, so OP would be 30. And it's something I'll never forget. It gives me goosebumps to this day. I live in a terraced house. Four houses combined. Four houses combined. My neighbors and I each have our own little patio. There's a small road 10 meters from my yard where people do their Sunday walks and so on. Only a small fence separates my small yard and patio from the road. I live in a pretty crowded area where several of these terraced houses spread around in my neighborhood, so seeing people walk down the road is pretty normal for me. Seeing random people standing on my patio is not. When I was 9, I usually got home from school about an hour before my mom got home from work. I lived maybe 50 meters away from school, so my mom figured I was mature enough to be home alone for around an hour before she got home. This one day, I got home from school, did the usual thing, which was to make sure I locked the front door, double-checked that the back door leading to the patio was also locked. I was 9, so being alone was a little scary, even though it was the middle of the day and only for an hour. I then rushed to my room upstairs to play as much PlayStation as possible before my mom came home and made me do homework. While playing, I heard this noise coming from outside my window. My room was located one floor over the patio with a view to the road. It was kind of like the sound of a cat, but my cat had been missing for over 3 months. Hope sparked, and I thought, oh my God, did he finally come back? I ran downstairs to check if it was my cat, but the sight that met me gives me goosebumps just writing this. There was a guy standing on my patio, a tall guy with black hair covering half of his eyes, making him look like a male version of the Ring woman or something. I could hear him making high-pitched sounds, almost like a cat meowing. Brown liquid was running down from his mouth, and I could see him spitting out my dad's stomped cigarettes. He was actually eating them from the ashtray. I was frozen observing this. Eventually snapped out of it, screamed so loud that the man must have heard it. He didn't react, he just kept eating from the ashtray. I ran upstairs to my room, locked the door, called my mom, who then called the cops. I've never been more terrified in my life. Laying in bed under my sheets, shivering with fear, as I hear these creepy high-pitched noises from a guy eating cigarettes stumps from the ashtray on my patio. I kind of blacked out for a moment because the next thing I remember is the police arriving on the road by my yard. I hear them talking to the guy saying stuff like, "What are you doing? Get over here or we will come down and arrest you," and so on. He didn't respond, but the high-pitched sounds were more frequent and louder. I decided to look through the window, feeling safe now that the cops were there. I could see 2 police officers standing by my fence, 1 man and a woman. I did not see the creepy man, however, because he was standing directly 1 story under me and my field of view. The police jumped the fence, and I remember hearing the creepy guy screaming louder than anything I've ever heard before. He charged the female police officer with full force, and he fucking knocked her out cold. The male officer then immediately tased the guy, leaving him shaking on the ground, screaming still. The policeman struggled to keep him on the ground while putting handcuffs on him, but eventually made it. After a while, managed to wake up the police officer, who seemed to be badly hurt. He called for backup and an ambulance. He sees me standing in the window above him. The expression on my face must have been something else because he just looked at me and said, "I sure as hell hope you didn't see all that." I started to cry. By this time, neighbors started to arrive, wondering what the hell was going on. One of my neighbors, an elderly woman, made me come down, and she took care of me until my mom came back home. The police took the creepy guy with them in the car and left. Before they left, they promised to come back and talk to us about what happened. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The male police officer came back later that night and sat down with me and my mom to talk. He explained that the guy in my patio was actually diagnosed with severe autism. He had escaped a facility where mentally challenged people lived, located around 5 kilometers from where I live. He explained that the guy had actually been living in my house 5 years ago, but he'd been forced to move when his mom, his only caretaker, had died. The poor guy probably thought he would find his mom in my house. He missed the routines and he missed living there with his mom. The police had to move him from the house 5 years ago because he was extremely strong. From what I heard, had extreme tensions in the body because of the autism, making his muscles grow stronger and stronger throughout the years. This was the reason he reacted the way he did when the police came this day. Still frightened, I told the police after that he needed to make sure this would never happen again. He promised it wouldn't. After a few sleepless nights, my life got back to normal. The years went by and the guy didn't come back until 1 year ago. At this time, my mom and dad had moved out. I bought the house from them and I'm still living here today. I was enjoying my morning coffee on the patio when I see this random guy stopping in the road by my fence. He just stands there looking at me. I look at him and give him a nod, and then I hear the high-pitched noises. Holy shit, it's him. His hair turned gray, but the high-pitched sounds made me realize. My heart started racing and I instantly remembered the reason why he was back. I realized he must have managed to escape again because I kept my cool a bit longer than when I was 9. I started to realize how sorry I felt for the guy. 16 years later, and he was back to look for his mom. I decided to carefully ask him if he wanted to come down to the patio. He instantly jumped the fence. I started to think he would knock me out like he did the police officer, but he didn't. He smiled. He just looked at me and smiled. I offered him to sit down. He didn't respond. I offered him to come inside, and he started laughing. We went inside. His face lit up. Pure joy. He was home. It reminded him of the life he had with his mom. It almost made me tear up. All of a sudden, he sat down on my couch, turned on the TV, and switched directly to the cartoons. I observed him for a while. He was just completely focused on the cartoons. I just wanted him to enjoy the moment, so I didn't say anything to him, but I realized I had to call the facility to let them know. The caretakers arrived 10 minutes later. After a lot of convincing, he got back up, crying, and they went back to the facility. I called to the facility 2 days later, and we made a deal. His name is Tom, and I now consider Tom my friend. Every Sunday, from the day he returned, Tom and his caretakers visit me to watch cartoons. They say it's the highlight of his week, and it makes my heart warm. Now, for several years, my thoughts were, let's not meet the guy in the patio eating from the ashtray, and now my thoughts are, let's meet every Sunday to watch cartoons, my friend Tom. Which I think is so sweet. I love this story so much. I love that it has a happy ending. It started out as something super scary, and then years later it ended up being something where they could, like, you know, not like form a relationship, but they kind of did that, like that kind of platonic friendship to where like they're able to just enjoy each other's company. He's able to be back in a place he's familiar with, and OP is like comfortable with it, and it's just like a fun, happy little thing. It started out really scary, but it ended up becoming just like a beautiful moment in the end, which I really love. Second story of today is titled, "My brother saw a ghost as a kid. 2 decades later, I realized what he actually saw." I was about 7 years old, my brother about 10. It was well past our bedtime when our mom woke up off the couch to put us to bed. Our dad worked construction out of town back then, so it was often just the 3 of us at the house for weeks at a time. Up the stairs and to the immediate right was our parents' bedroom. Going left put you in the middle of the hallway. Taking another left down the hallway led to my brother's room. The opposite end was my room, which was also across the hall from our upstairs bathroom. My brother and mom both had a habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I only knew this because I was always a light sleeper and they just couldn't help flushing with the door wide open. This night, however, my brother stopped on his way to his room and came back towards the bathroom. "I'm gonna try to pee before I go to bed. The past 2 nights I've been too afraid to walk to the bathroom. I keep seeing a man wearing stripes at the end of the hallway." I don't know if my mom wrote it off as my brother telling ghost stories to try to scare me, or she was already half asleep and didn't catch it, but she didn't react at all to my brother's confession. I, on the other hand, was terrified by it, and the fear of seeing a ghost like that at the end of the hallway or through the windows is the reason I started running from the stairs to my bedroom at night. Years later, when I was 18, my mom and I were having a conversation in our car about a dog we had for a very short time when I was little. We were sharing stories about Max's tendency towards destroying my shoes and other unruly behaviors when my mom blurted out, "Do you remember that time I opened the front door for the cops and Max ran inside to the kitchen and started tearing up a big bag of dog food we had?" This really caught me by surprise because all these years I lived in the house, we've never called the cops. An owner family in a quiet rural West Virginia neighborhood, etc. I asked her what she was talking about, and she looked equally surprised as if she had just revealed something by accident. "Oh, that's right. I never told you because you were too young at the time. One night, I woke up hearing noises outside my window, and when I looked, I saw a man staring into my bedroom." She went on to describe how turning on the lights caused him to take off running and how she grabbed my dad's pistol before calling the cops. I can't remember all of the details I gave them when they showed up. Tall white male wearing a striped shirt and jeans, short dark hair, something like that. They said it matched the description of the man they were looking for in the area. It turns out he'd escaped from jail on a murder charge. Now, I know it sounds so obvious hearing these 2 stories back to back, but it wasn't until a few years ago, in my mid-20s, that I pieced together that my brother had unknowingly warned us about a murderer who had spent multiple nights casing our home. And that is it for that second story. Like I said, it was pretty short. I'm not even gonna, OP does have a few comments that they make. However, I'm not going to go through them right now. If you guys want me to go through the comments, you can let me know down below. If you want me to make a separate video going through the comments, seeing if there's any updates, etc. But this post itself is a few years old. This one's also about 5 years old. So a lot of you have probably already heard this by now, but if you want to check it out yourself, it will be linked below as well. So this one, oh, this one's 8 years old. Wow, I can't believe, okay, so this one's 8 years old. I don't think I've heard this one before, but it's titled, "I Survived a Mass Shooting at a Movie Theater." This happened to me 4 years ago. It's by far the most extreme and life-threatening situation I've been in. The eyewitness accounts you're about to read is 100% true, and it's mine. For some understanding, this happened in the United States. It was the summer of 2012. My longtime boyfriend and I had recently gotten married. Even though we were dirt poor college students and lived in a dinky apartment, we were having a blast. That particular summer, we gathered with our friends at the local movie theater almost every weekend. There was just one down the street from our apartment that had really cheap movie tickets. A night out that was under $10 was certainly within our budget. Anyway, one Thursday night, I received a call from this group of friends inviting us to watch the midnight premiere of the newest Batman movie. I just finished working a 12-hour shift and I was pretty tired. I almost refused the invitation and thought of crashing in my apartment instead. However, I didn't want to miss out on the fun, and it was a movie I'd wanted to see for a while anyway. Certainly wouldn't do any harm to stay up later than usual and miss a few hours of sleep, right? At 10:30 p.m., we met at the theater. We passed a large cardboard cutout of Catwoman and Batman as we walked inside, greeted by the smell of buttery popcorn and the chatter of excited moviegoers. The ticket booth was to the right of the entrance, and just above that was an electronic list of movies being played. The 12 a.m. showing of Dark Knight Rises was displayed up there in bright red letters. Being paranoid that tickets would sell out quickly, one of my friends swung by earlier that day and purchased the tickets for all of us. We bypassed the tickets line and went straight to the ticket theater. She smiled at us and kindly directed us to Theater 9, which was on the right side of the lobby. If only I had known what I do now, that among the crowd, a killer was lurking. That as I walked across that tacky red and purple carpet towards Theater 9, I could have been walking to my death. I think about it often now, what I would have done had I known. Pulled the fire alarm, called the police, screamed for people to want to run away. But of course, I had no way of knowing what was about to happen. Oblivious to the peril I was putting myself in, I pushed open the doors for Theater 9 without giving it a second thought. The hallway in this theater was shaped like a U and could go either right or left. Theater 9 was the largest screening room in the building, perfect for accommodating the crowds that midnight premieres brought in. The screen was motionless and gray. Not even previews had started yet because there was a still good hour and a half to go before the movie actually started. We entered on the right side, so all the seats were to our left. I remember being surprised at just how packed the theater already was. Just about every seat was filled, much to our dismay. At first, it seemed like we wouldn't find a spot to sit together. Now, the way this theater was set up, there was a section of seats right in front of the screen. This area was flat, and there were about 5 rows of seating in the section. A lot of seats in the section were empty, but sitting right in front of the movie screen sucks, and none of us wanted to sit there. One of my friends then spotted a row with 5 empty seats all next to each other, perfect for the amount of people we had. These seats were about 3 to 4 rows up from where the seating rows started to elevate. We ran up the stairs before someone could take the seats and filed in. My husband, Brock, sat in the 5th seat. I sat next to him, and my friend Samantha sat next to me on my right side. Her boyfriend, Tommy, sat next to her, and another friend named Leo sat in the aisle seat. We spent the next several minutes casually chatting, joking around, and laughing. After a while, my 3 friends went to the lobby to buy drinks and the addicting movie theater popcorn. When they were gone, Brock and I passed the time by people watching. The theater was bright since the lights weren't dimmed yet, and I could see everyone clearly. There were a lot of people dressed in Batman t-shirts and hoodies. One person even had a mask on and one of those shirts with an attached cape. There was a lot of kids in attendance as well, which wasn't surprising because even though it was a Thursday night, it was summer vacation, so that meant no school the next day. Of all the people I saw, the person I will never forget was this little girl sitting in our same row a few chairs away. She was really cute, blonde with blue eyes, and passed us several times on our way to the lobby, each time coming back with various snacks and popcorn. Overall, people seemed very excited to see the movie, and the room was filled with energy and laughter. After what seemed like an eternity of waiting, the lights started to dim and the previews began. Just like every movie I've seen before, a quick animation flashed across the screen, reminding us to get refreshments from the lobby. We were already devouring the popcorn like ravenous animals. Same. To silence our cell phones and to make sure we know where the emergency exits are. The animation had this ugly CGI cat in a tuxedo that was sitting in a movie theater. I casually glanced at the bright green emergency exit signs that were on the left and right sides of the movie screen. I didn't think much of the reminder, like usual. After that, I only remember one preview of The Man in Steel. The others, I'm not sure what they were. When the movie started, the theater erupted in cheering and clapping. The title of the movie, The Dark Knight Rises, exploded on screen. This was followed by the scene where Bane is hijacking a plane. I thought the scene was pretty cool, and it caught my interest right away. Only when the movie started to get a little less interesting did I remember just how tired I was. I decided I would close my eyes at the more boring parts to get a little bit of rest. I had been awake for 20 hours at this point. Girl. So I was rightfully sleepy. My eyes were closed for most of the duration of Batman and Catwoman's encounter. I don't really remember what was going on in that part of the movie. Perhaps some of you have seen it and know what I'm talking about. I haven't. Anyway, when I opened my eyes again, Bruce Wayne was on his computer digging up information on Catwoman. This is the last scene I saw. I never got to watch the rest of the movie. All of a sudden, a loud bang erupted from the left side of the theater. I sort of screamed a little bit because it startled me. A strange smell started to fill the auditorium. It was like the smell of a firework, so I thought it was a cherry bomb or something similar. Had someone thrown fireworks into the crowd as a prank? Then, down near the right side of the movie screen, a dark silhouette of a person caught my attention. There was just a black frame against the bright movie screen. A series of flashing lights was coming from this person. It was a weird moment where time literally slowed down and everything went strangely quiet. I was completely frozen, unable to move, and really unable to think at all. It was like my brain had stopped working entirely. Brock caught on immediately to what was happening and he grabbed me. He pulled me to the ground and laid on top of me, shielding me with his own body. At this point in time, sound had returned to me and I could hear the gunshots ringing out across the theater. People were screaming. The movie was still playing on top of it, creating a chaotic explosion of sound. I realized the flashing lights I'd seen were bullets flying out of a gun barrel. An instant sensation of adrenaline flooded my body. There was absolutely nothing I could do except lay there and hope to God that the bullets I heard ripping through the seats and walls wouldn't go through me too. At one point, shrapnel hit my head, cutting off a good chunk of my hair. And as I reached for the spot to make sure I wasn't bleeding, hot pieces of metal fell onto my hand. I was laying face up so I could see everything that was happening. The lights from a still playing movie danced across the ceiling and walls. My friends were on the floor with me. Our unfinished bucket of popcorn was spilled all across the floor. Leo had his legs sticking out into the aisle because there wasn't enough room for him to hide completely behind the seats. At some point, Samantha's water bottle, which had been in the cup holder between our seats, exploded. Water splashed all over my face. The smell of gun smoke was overwhelming. Riot-grade tear gas made me cry and caused me to cough uncontrollably. There was another smell too, the horrible metallic smell of blood that I'll never forget. I remember my lower body feeling wet all of a sudden. For some reason, I thought this came from the leaking water bottle, but I soon realized that wasn't the case. All of a sudden, things went strangely quiet. The bullets had stopped for some reason. Tommy shouted, "Let's get out of here." We took advantage of the opportunity and made a run for it. We ran down the stairs across from the screen towards the bright green exit sign. We crammed into a small closet-like space where the door was. It was so dark, we had a hard time finding it. We were screaming and slamming on the walls to find the door, blinded by the tear gas and dumbfounded by shock. Then, finally, my hands felt the metal door handle and I pushed against it with all my strength. The door flew open and the lights of a nearby streetlight flooded our eyes. We pushed against the door so hard that we all fell onto the concrete. Samantha lost her pink flip-flops just outside this doorway. As I scrambled to my feet and literally ran for my life, I realized my legs were red, absolutely soaked with blood. It was like I dipped my legs into a bathtub of it. I checked my body all over and realized I wasn't injured at all. Where had all this blood come from? I looked behind me and realized that the blood was my husband's. He had been shot in the leg. A massive gaping hole had ripped through the lower half of Brock's right leg. His foot was barely hanging on and dangling lifelessly. Leo and a young man I didn't recognize were carrying Brock because after falling outside the door, he'd lost all his strength and he couldn't walk. I was completely shocked. I had no idea he'd been injured, especially since he was right behind me the whole time and managed to escape the theater all by himself. How he did it on one foot, I'll never know. At this point, I screamed. My scream was so loud that it alerted nearby construction workers. At the back of the theater, there was a narrow parking lot followed by a grassy lawn and then the street beyond that. The construction workers were doing road repair on the street, but as soon as they heard my scream and saw us running, they stopped working and watched what was going on. I'm not sure why this is such a vivid part of my memory. Anyway, they carried Brock alongside the back sidewalk all the way to the end where the corner of the building is. This was quite a distance, several dozen feet. My husband then collapsed from exhaustion and pain, saying he couldn't move anymore. He laid down in a puddle of blood and started to form beneath him. I looked back and realized we'd left a trail of blood leading from the door all the way to our current position. I was trembling. I knelt beside Brock and glanced around to see who was injured. Tommy had been shot in the knee and the hip and was further away in the parking lot. The teenager who helped my husband was also injured. His dad and mom were with him. His mom was sitting against the wall and looked like she was going to pass out. She was bleeding from several places. That family escaped at the same time we did. I guess they heard the bullets stop and decided to make a run for it. We were all lucky because the shooting was still going on inside. I had to take off my shirt and use it to stop the bleeding. I'll never forget how lifeless and limp his leg felt, and I imagined what a dead body must feel like. I got blood all over my hands and arms. The police showed up really, really fast. I'd say we were only outside for a minute or two before the red and blue sirens filled the night and rushed to our location. We were literally a block away from the police station. A female officer stood by us the whole time until paramedics arrived, which took a very long time. Brock was one of the last to be taken to the hospital. He was bleeding out for almost 20 minutes before an ambulance pulled up on the same street with the road work. At this point, he'd become almost unresponsive and was on the verge of unconsciousness. Several massive guys rushed across the grass with a stretcher, loaded him onto it, and then ran with him back to the waiting ambulance. I wasn't able to go with him because there was another injured person in the ambulance and it was too crowded. I wandered around to the front of the theater alone, unsure of where my friends had went. My blood-stained shirt and pool of blood were left behind in the corner of the sidewalk. Walking through the crowd felt like a dream. I couldn't believe what had just happened. People were in hysterics and crying. A lot of people, as me, were covered in blood, and like me, I'm pretty sure the blood staining their skin and clothes wasn't their own. A lot of people seemed to notice how lonely and dazed I looked, so they kept me company and even offered me a ride to different hospitals to find Brock, because I hadn't been told what hospital he was taken to. I hung around these people for a while as police swarmed the area and asked us what we saw inside the theater. The whole parking lot was on lockdown, and we weren't going to be allowed to leave anytime soon. It was around 2 a.m., so it was very dark outside still, and I was pretty cold, wearing only an undershirt and shorts. The flashing red and blue lights of what seemed like 100 police officers were blinding. I remember seeing a big police vehicle pull up that said something like Crime Scene Investigation Unit on it. I think this is when it really sank in and hit me, and I started to get sick to my stomach and wanted to vomit, but somehow I was able to hold back. Eventually, police started letting people leave. I jumped into my truck and booked it out of there. I was in such a panic that I didn't even think to go back to my apartment, grab my cell phone, which I had forgotten, and call my parents or someone else to help me. I was angry, upset, scared, and most of all, still in a state of shock. Was I really going to lose Brock only a month shy of our first wedding anniversary because of some psychopath with a gun? Thankfully, by the time dawn rolled around and I found the hospital he was treated in, this was the next city over, maybe about 45 minutes from the theater, if you're going the speed limit. I was so happy to be there, and the hospital staff were so welcoming and understanding. After making sure I wasn't injured as well, they let me wait in the ICU room that Brock would be placed in when he was done recovering from surgery. I was so glad he was alive. Brock and Tommy both survived, although many others weren't so lucky. I found out the following day, after much needed sleep on a hospital couch, that 12 people were killed in the shooting and over 70 were injured. I remember they first thought 15 were killed, but the real number was 12. The little blonde girl sitting in my road did not survive. She died in the theater no more than a few feet from us. She had been shot multiple times. A heartbroken police officer who cried during his court testimony tried unsuccessfully to save her by carrying her out of the theater and having her sent to a hospital. Tommy was rushed to a different hospital in the back of a police car. He underwent surgery and made a full recovery. The bullet missed his hip bone and narrowly missed his urinary tract and bladder. According to the surgeons, my husband lost almost half his blood. Brock made it to the hospital just in time. Any later and he would have died. He underwent several blood transfusions and was in the hospital for 21 days. The wound in his leg was severe enough that they had to amputate it after trying unsuccessfully to save it. I'm not surprised. It sounded like that's where that was going, was amputation. I learned everything from watching the televised trial that took place in early 2015. The guy was going to school for neuroscience or something in California. I guess he was a pretty smart guy. However, for some reason, he had an obsession with killing people and had a stalker mentality. After dropping out of his university, he moved to my state and chose my local theater to commit a mass shooting. Before that, he was planning on hiding along remote hiking trails up in the mountains, jumping people, pulling them into the woods, and killing them there, though he never went through with that idea. He stalked my theater for months and had the shooting all planned out for the night of July 20th. Though I never saw him before this, it's unnerving to think of this To think this guy could have been watching us every time we went to the theater and we would have never known it. We were completely unaware of what he had planned against us. This completely ruined my sense of security because who knows what the stranger next to you is planning on doing to you. I came very close to the shooter, but I never actually saw his face in person until I was forced to testify in court. Of course, I saw his mugshots on television, but while in theater, I only saw him as a dark silhouette in the shadows, like a demonic figure rendered from the darkest and most sinister nightmare. He was even in the hallway that was passed upon running for the emergency exit. The only thing stopping him from killing us there and then was his jammed assault rifle. To commit this crime, he ordered a few thousand rounds of ammunition, riot gear, and armor, tear gas, an assault rifle, and a shotgun. He took pictures of himself, which were shown in court, wearing all of the gear like some sick trophy and holding up these weapons with a menacing smile. He dyed his hair orange and put on these creepy black contacts while making devilish faces into the camera, something that made me sick just looking at. Before driving to the theater with all of his gear in his car, he booby-trapped his entire apartment and set it to explode if anyone opened the door. Then, once at the theater, he posed as a moviegoer and even bought a ticket for the movie. I think his ticket had said Theater 8 on it, which was next to us, but Theater 9 had more people in it, so we went into number 9 instead. He was in the few front rows. I must have passed him several times in the lobby while he was there. Maybe he'd seen me too. And at some point during the movie, he got up and went through the exit, which didn't have an alarm for some reason, kept it propped open with something, and then went to his car to put on all his armor and grabbed his weapons. Then he came back inside and started shooting. After we escaped the theater, we ran past his white car, which was parked right at the exit. We didn't even notice it. At some point, he came outside, and he would have seen us on the concrete. I don't know what stopped him from shooting people that were outside too, but he could have easily ended us then and there if he wanted to. I think the hardest part of this for me was facing his twisted individual in court. I'll never forget rising as they called my name, walking down the center row past my family, other survivors, and crowds of news-hungry media personnel. I sat right across from him, maybe only 10 feet away, while his orange hair was gone and he wasn't wearing the black contacts. Being so close to him was a creepy and uncomfortable experience. My encounters with this man are certainly ones I will never forget. I can now say that I've come face to face with a true deranged psychopath. He just had this blank stare in his eyes as the whole time. If eyes truly are the window to the soul, then his soul was filled with nothing but a cold indifference for those he had murdered and harmed. He wouldn't even look at me. Sitting across from him in court was the second time I had knowingly been in the same room with this man. A man who had tried to take my life but thankfully failed. A man who would end up spending forever behind bars, and at the end of it all, he was sentenced to 3,318 years in prison for his crimes. This is the man who tried to kill me. The man who had caused countless nightmares and fueled the fire of my paranoia. The man who hurt my friends and family, causing years of untold grief for my husband because he will never walk the same again. The man who stole the innocence and joy from a 6-year-old child who went to the theater alive and came out dead. To the man who carried out this mass shooting the worst mass shooting in Colorado history. Let's not meet again, ever. I hope you rot in prison. Edit for grammar and stuff. I also forgot to mention that Leo, Samantha, and I escaped without any injury. A lot of people asked, so I thought I'd mention it. Thanks for the support. I never expected so many people to read my story. Also, thank you to all you anonymous gold givers. No, I will not be giving any more information about my identity for an obvious reason. I have provided proof to the moderators, and I don't think it's necessary to share that info with anyone else. I do have photos of my husband's injury, though I will not likely post them here for his privacy and for the graphic nature of the photo. All right, so thank you everyone for watching. If you stuck with me through this entire video, this one's a bit longer because this last story is quite long. I don't think I'm going to separate it into a part 1 and a part 2. I think I'm just going to leave it as is, all 3 of them together. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for supporting my channel. Comment down below if you guys want to hear more stories like this, or if you have stories of your own that you'd like to include, like for me to include in a video, or if you just want to talk about it in the comments, that's totally cool too. If you're comfortable with that, go right ahead. But I believe that is it for this video. So yeah, thank you again for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.